Enlightenment, meditation, and the menace of authority in respect to the truly spiritual and liberated mind. A reflection on actuality, truth, mind manifestation, and transcendence. The speaker would like to ask you the following question. What is enlightenment, and how can it be defined? Please reflect on this question thoroughly. If you are done reflecting, you might have come up with some of the following statements. Enlightenment is gathering knowledge, obtaining revelations, understanding the world, wisdom, understanding the spiritual realm, understanding and manifesting the mind, achieving awareness, spiritual awareness, ethical awareness, and so on. Enlightenment is the result of meditation, the result of prayer, a higher form of thought, a higher level of existence, the discovery of truth, connecting to the Holy Spirit, experiencing Jesus, the Messiah, or maybe entering the Nirvana, obtaining the Zen, and so on. As you might have realized by yourself, there are many different ideas on what enlightenment actually is. There are also many opinions on what the true path towards enlightenment actually is. The Christian follows the teachings of the priest. The Muslim follows the teachings of the mullah or imam. The Jew follows the teaching of the rabbi, and so on. The spiritual person might also follow the teachings of the Buddha, or of the guru, or the yoga teacher, or the esoteric, and so on. The atheist, on the other hand, might follow the teachings of the professor, or the empiricist, or the secularized philosopher, or maybe the politician, and so on. So, what do all of these illustrations have in common? Please carefully observe and reflect. What do all these illustrations have in common? Well, one can conclude that all of these scenarios just mentioned imply following somebody, or somebody's words, somebody's ideas, right? Then let the speaker ask you, what does following actually imply? Following somebody's words, ideas, or ideology intrinsically implies some concept of authority, right? Let us keep this thought for a while. Let's keep this thought while we're going back to the beginning of our reflection. We initially reflected about enlightenment and realized that there is no simple definition to enlightenment, of course. But we can certainly agree that enlightenment implies achieving a higher state of consciousness, right? Or maybe a fully developed, manifested and aware mind, in a sense, right? Some sort of transcendence, no matter how we interpret it, right? And it is because of this desire that some of us are searching for God, isn't it? Therefore, some of us are entering yoga practice, right? Again, others are studying the writings of Plato, or Kant, or Nietzsche, right? And some of us are praying, or fasting, or even chastising themselves, right? Let us hold our thoughts again and take a look at what has been stated before regarding the concept of authority. The term authority relates to the word author. That means to a person regarded as the maker, the creator, or the originator, right? Let us relate this to our earlier findings. The priest, we mentioned before, is the author of the Christian paradigms, the Christian doctrines, and the Christian teachings, right? So therefore, he carries the authority within the Christian community. The rabbi is the originator of the Jewish paradigms, the Jewish doctrines, and the Jewish teachings. Agreed? So therefore he carries the authority within the Jewish community. The totalitarian state leader is the author of the paradigms, doctrines and teachings of the totalitarian state, isn't he? So therefore he carries the authority within the totalitarian society, right? The guru is the author of the spiritual paradigms, the spiritual doctrines, and all the teachings he proclaims. Therefore he carries the authority within the community of spiritualists, right? The yoga teacher is the author of the yoga paradigms, the doctrines, the techniques, and the teachings. Therefore he carries the authority within the community of yoga practitioners, isn't he? And so on, and so on, and so on. If we reflect on this together, we find that wherever there is some author or authority, some idea, some paradigm, some dogma, doctrine, or teaching is automatically and intrinsically imposed, right? Good. If we connect this finding to the idea of a mind that is truly enlightened, fully developed, aware and manifested, we instantly realize that we are dealing with a problematic relationship of such a manifested mind towards the idea of authority, the idea of authors, and all imposed teachings, right? The enlightened mind, therefore, seems to stand in some sort of contradiction to authority. Right? Very good. Hold this thought in your mind right now. By observing, we discovered this paradox. The paradox of enlightenment standing in contradiction to teachings and authority. And this paradox can be dismantled very easily. First of all, we need to understand that the truly manifested, aware mind must know complete freedom. It needs to dwell in a realm in which there are no limitations, no barriers, no borders, no doctrines, no dogmas, no paradigms, no chains, no dictatorship, no authority. The free and enlightened mind must reside in an environment free of any set of values or judgment. In other words, it can only unfold and manifest itself, yet again, in the realm in which there is no authority. Can you follow the thought? Very good. If not, let us ask ourselves the following questions. If I go to church and do as the priest tells me, am I free or subscribing myself to some sort of authority? If I go to the meditation class and do as the guru tells me, am I free or subscribing myself to some sort of authority? If I go to school and do as the teacher tells me, am I subscribing myself to some sort of authority or not? And if I read to the speaker speaking these very words, following his thought, am I actually free thinking? Or in a certain way also subscribing myself to some sort of authority? The latter question is especially remarkable because if you have asked yourself this question before actually listening to it, listening to the speaker telling it to you, you have already understood and realized a lot about your very own path towards finding your very own mind manifestation. If you are still pondering on this, and of course on all the other questions, let the speaker give you a helping hand. But before helping you out, it must be understood that the words of the speaker must not be considered words of authority. They are merely words describing the speaker's very own findings in his very own quest for self-realization and transcendence. They are no teaching by means of the traditional definition of teaching, but they may, and so hopes the speaker, lead you towards valuable insights. So, if we take all these points that have been discussed and reflected on into consideration, your speaker concludes the following. First of all, the mind must be free from any sort of doctrine, dogma, teaching, claimed truth, and so on, to be in a condition that allows the mind to truly achieve an enlightenment. As a consequence, the mind must be active, awake, fresh, present. This does not mean that the mind must reject teachings by means of principality. But it must also not absorb them passively. Never. If the yoga guru tells you about believing in chakras and the kundalini in order to achieve an enlightened state of mind, he is deceiving you. Once you subscribe yourself to the teachings of the guru, your mind is instantly frozen. It's not active anymore. It is just following. It is a subject to an authority. Therefore, it cannot be enlightened. If the priest tells you about the Messiah and the apostles and the Holy Spirit as the path towards enlightenment, he's deceiving you. When subscribing yourself to the Christian doctrine, your mind is again instantly frozen. It does not act as an active mind. It just follows passively. It is the subject to yet another form of authority. Therefore, it cannot be enlightened. If you are discussing with your lecturers and your professors at the university, and you find your mind subscribing itself to theory A or B or C, from whatever kind of professor or lecturer that is postulated, it has again been deceived. It has again been frozen and subdued to another form of authority. Because it is absorbing. It is passive. And again, it cannot reach the enlightened state anymore. And if you are still listening to the speaker, and you're just absorbing the speaker's words as a passive recipient, you are actually also not engaging with an aware, an active and reflecting mind. So one must conclude that enlightenment and mind manifestation can only be achieved by the actual mind itself, the mind longing for enlightenment and its own manifestation. It means that the mind needs to be free and in motion. It must be engaging with the world. It must be observing the world. In this very observation, one also finds the true definition of meditation. This will be dealt with in another short episode. But remember that observation is equal to meditation. Chanting, praying, and all other activities distract the mind from being present rather than empowering it to experience and observe holistically, completely. Furthermore, the mind must never dwell in the realm of judgment, or in the realm of values, or even in a realm of so-called truth. Instead, it must experience, and experience only. For any conclusion can only be concluded by this very mind itself. For any genuine truth can only be found within this mind itself, and never by the postulations and elaborations of any sort of guru, of any sort of prophet, philosopher, politician, teacher, or leader, not even by the speaker.